Jack Nicholson walks into his own dealership in disguise, only to be underestimated by his own staff. Watch the Undercover story. The shocking twist teaches you a lesson about respect. Like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on this eye-opening encounter. A man walked into the city's most luxurious car showroom, dressed simply in a gray hoodie, jeans, and worn-out sneakers. No one knew he had just stepped out of a high-level meeting, where he was the sole decision-maker. Today, he wasn't arriving as a CEO. He was just here, as an ordinary customer. The moment he stepped through the gleaming glass doors of Luxury Motors, the receptionist's gaze swept over him like wiping away dust from the floor. No warm greeting, no polite smile, just a skeptical look and a chill in the air, as if he had wandered into a place where he didn't belong. "Pretty sure you're looking for the used car lot down the street," a woman's voice said, just polite enough to avoid complaints, but sharp enough to sting like a slap. They didn't know who he was. They didn't recognize the eyes that had once stared down billion-dollar investors, or the voice that had steered an empire of luxury vehicles. And in just a few hours, the very people snickering at him would be left speechless. When the truth came to light, a complete reversal, a costly lesson, and the beginning of a cultural reckoning across the entire company. This isn't just a story about a CEO being underestimated. It's a lesson for all of us. Never judge someone by what they wear. Luxury Motors, a name synonymous with prestige in the city of Sunville, the glass facade shimmered like crystal under the sun. Rows of sports cars, supercars, and limousines lined up like a fashion show set to a symphony of elegance. This wasn't just a luxury car dealership. It was a hub where tycoons, celebrities, and the city's elite gathered, signing million-dollar deals over espresso or champagne. And at the heart of this glittering empire was Jack Nicholson, a legendary name not just in film, but also a silent yet razor-sharp investor. Recently, Jack had quietly acquired Luxury Motors. No press release, no PR campaign, and certainly no need to plaster his name on the building. For him, real power lies in watching people, especially when they don't know they're being watched. But Jack wasn't observing out of idle curiosity. A week earlier, he received an anonymous letter at his private office. Inside was a stack of customer receipts from Luxury Motors, alongside a series of accusations: discrimination, condescension, and unprofessionalism by key employees. Guests who dressed simply were ignored. Clients who didn't look rich were dismissed. And there was evidence. Jack didn't get angry. He got curious. Curious whether the place he had just invested millions in actually upheld the core principle he believed in: respect people first, before checking their bank accounts. So the plan began. On a Monday morning, Jack drove up to the showroom in an old SUV, the same one he'd owned since his early days of stardom. No chauffeur, no tailored suit, no designer sunglasses. Just a gray hoodie, worn jeans, and a pair of sneakers that had walked countless miles. He stepped inside like any ordinary man. Maybe a mechanic, a writer, or someone simply looking around. Inside, the showroom buzzed with chatter and laughter. No one recognized him. Of course not. Who would suspect that the man who just acquired the entire company was walking in unannounced? Dressed like that, a woman quickly approached. Elena, head of sales. Sharp features, sharper eyes, not a wrinkle on her tailored outfit. With nearly a decade at Luxury Motors, she saw herself as the dealership's gatekeeper of prestige. She'd been trained to spot VIP clients in under 3 seconds, and if someone didn't meet the mark, they were declined, politely or not. Elena looked Jack up and down, or more accurately, she looked at the hoodie and the worn sneakers. Her expression shifted instantly from courteous to skeptical. Her tone dropped to half volume, just professional enough but with a chill that made it clear he wasn't welcome. "Excuse me, sir. Can I help you?" she asked, lips curling into a thin smile. We serve clients with prior appointments. If you're looking for used vehicles, there's a smaller dealership 3 blocks down. Jack smiled slightly. No reaction. No anger. He nodded and asked calmly, "Suppose I wanted to take a look at that coupe in the far corner. Do I need an appointment for that?" Elena stared at him as if her patience was being tested. "That car isn't on public display. It starts at over $300,000. I don't believe it fits your needs." From across the room, a few other staff members exchanged glances and snickered. To them, it was a familiar scene. An ordinary person stepping into a place that wasn't meant for them, soon to be politely escorted out. But this time, things wouldn't end the way they expected. Elena remained standing in front of Jack, gripping a folder tightly, as if ready to use it as a shield against whatever nuisance this hoodie-clad man might bring into her pristine showroom. "All right," she said, her voice laced with false courtesy. "I'll show you a few models that are more suitable." "You?" Jack raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. He followed Elena as she led him toward a display tucked in the corner of the showroom, an area reserved for pre-owned vehicles, muted in color and clearly less maintained. "These are the models currently on promotion," Elena said, pointing at an older sedan. "Fuel efficient, great pricing, and, most importantly, accessible to the general customer." From across the room, a young employee named Marcus, dressed in a blue shirt and polishing the windows of a Bentley, glanced over at Jack and let out a quiet whistle. He turned to a coworker beside him. "Another one of those guys who thinks test driving luxury cars is a free weekend activity." Jack maintained his faint smile. He strolled toward a sleek sports coupe showcased in the center of the room, the very one Elena had dismissed earlier, and gently placed his hand on the car's window. Elena reacted instantly. "I'm sorry, sir. You're not allowed to touch that model without supervision." She rushed over, stepping directly between Jack and the vehicle. "And as I mentioned earlier, this line requires an appointment. Perhaps you're not aware, but our real clients usually arrive with a scheduled time, a tailored suit, and a clear purpose." Jack withdrew his hand, still calm. "I was under the impression the showroom was open to walk-ins." Elena smirked. "Technically, yes, but not everyone who walks in qualifies as a potential buyer." Just then, a well-dressed couple entered. She wore oversized Chanel sunglasses, he in a slick gray suit. Elena's demeanor shifted in a heartbeat. "Good morning, Mr. Davidson. So wonderful to see you and your wife again. The Aston Martin you asked about has arrived." Without a second glance at Jack, she whisked the couple away to the VIP section. Meanwhile, Marcus walked over to Jack, a catalog in hand. "Hey, buddy," he said, his tone a blend of casual and condescending. "I can show you a few rides more your speed. No need to waste time dreaming about wild horses like that one." He nodded toward the polished coupe. Jack looked at him for a long moment, then asked, "What if I told you I could afford 3 of those?" Marcus snorted. "If talk equaled cash, the world would be full of billionaires. If you manage to buy even one of those, I'll personally wash your car free for a month." Jack chuckled. "I'll remember that promise." At that moment, another gaze began to focus on Jack, this one more discerning. Linda, a veteran employee with over 15 years at the dealership, quietly observed from across the room. Something about the man, his posture, his eyes, the way he carried himself, felt eerily familiar. She wasn't sure where she'd seen him before, but her instincts screamed, "This man isn't ordinary." Meanwhile, Elena was still entertaining the high-end couple, pouring wine, laughing softly, describing engine specs with a sugary cadence. But every so often, her eyes flicked toward Jack. Each time she saw he was still there, her brows furrowed. "Why hasn't he left yet?" she muttered. Finally, her patience snapped. Elena strode directly over to Jack, her expression stone cold. "Sir," she said, this time unable to mask her irritation, "if you have no serious intentions, I'm going to have to ask you to leave and make room for other customers." The room went quiet. Heads turned. Linda frowned. Marcus smirked. Jack looked her in the eye, steady and composed. "You truly believe I have no serious intentions?" Elena folded her arms. "Let's just say, it's pretty obvious." Jack nodded slightly, then calmly pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Elena," he said, phone pressed to his ear, "I think you'll want to wait a few more minutes. The owner of this place is about to arrive." The entire showroom seemed to hold its breath as Jack Nicholson pressed the phone to his ear, his voice calm, yet somehow chilling the air a few degrees. "Yes, it's me. I'm at the Sunville showroom. Everything's fine. Just a small misunderstanding," he said, eyes fixed on Elena, who was slowly beginning to sense that something wasn't quite right. When Jack ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket, Elena forced a smile. It looked more strained than friendly. "Oh, who did you just call?" she asked. Jack shrugged. "Someone with a bit more authority than you." Elena squinted. "We didn't do anything wrong. I was simply following the client screening process." Or was it discrimination? A voice rang out from the entrance. Every head in the room turned toward the source. A middle-aged man in a sharp navy suit entered the showroom. His silver hair was neatly slicked back, his gaze sharp and experienced. It was Robert Hale, Regional Director of Luxury Motors for the Southern Division. Elena froze. Her clipboard nearly slipped from her grasp. "Mr. Hale." Robert walked straight toward Jack, extending his hand with unmistakable respect. "Mr. Nicholson, a pleasure to see you again. I came the moment I got your call." "Thank you, Robert," Jack replied, shaking his hand with composed ease. The entire showroom fell into dead silence. The name Nicholson began echoing in the minds of every employee present. Whispers started. Marcus squinted at the man in the hoodie and jeans, the one he'd been mocking not 15 minutes earlier. "Wait a sec," Marcus muttered. "No way." Robert turned to Elena, his eyes razor-sharp. "Seems you've had a busy morning." Elena swallowed hard. I didn't know it was him." "That's the problem, Elena," Robert interrupted. "You didn't need to know who he was. All you needed to know was how to treat a customer. With respect." Jack folded his arms, his expression as calm as ever. "You see, Elena, I didn't come here to play games. I came to see for myself what's happening at the branch. I just invested millions of dollars into." Robert glanced around the room, sweeping his eyes across every employee. "Mr. Nicholson is not just the new owner of this location. He is a key strategic shareholder of the entire Luxury Motors network." Elena looked like her eyes might pop out of their sockets. She took a step back, her usual confidence nowhere in sight. As for Marcus, he just stared at Jack like he'd just watched a legend walk out of a movie screen. "No freaking way," he whispered. "I told him he should go look at used cars." Jack didn't scold anyone. He simply stood in silence, letting the truth settle with its own weight. Robert cleared his throat. "I think it's time we all heard a few words from Mr. Nicholson." Jack stepped toward the center of the showroom, light from above glinting off his face. "Oh." No anger, no accusations, just clarity. And every word that followed landed like the toll of a bell in the silence. "I didn't come here undercover to deceive anyone. I came to see the truth. And the truth is, today, I wasn't welcomed. Not because I couldn't afford the cars, but because I didn't look the part." The air thickened with discomfort. Jack continued, "I can forgive what happened. I've seen worse. But what disappoints me most is that the very place I trusted with my investment failed to recognize what real value looks like." His eyes met Elena's. She lowered her head, speechless. "We sell luxury cars, but we are never entitled to belittle anyone just because they aren't wearing designer labels." And then he closed with a line that made every head in the room rise in contemplation. A car can be priced by money, But the worth of a human being has never been found on the surface. The Sunville Luxury Motors showroom was wrapped in silence. No more laughter, no more murmurs. Every gaze was fixed on the man they had all misjudged. Now, standing in the center of the room with a presence no one could ignore. Jack Nicholson, no longer the odd guy in a hoodie, but the new owner of the very system they all worked for. And now, he began to speak. "When I decided to invest in this brand," Jack said, voice calm but resonant, "I wasn't investing in cars or profits. I was investing in people. Investing in how we treat one another. I believe great service doesn't begin with a price list. It begins with respect." His words echoed through the showroom. Behind him, Elena stood frozen, gripping her clipboard like it was the only thing anchoring her to reality. Jack continued, his voice low but razor sharp. "Today, I was served with judgment. Not because of my needs, not because of my intentions, but because of how I was dressed." He turned to Marcus, the one who had smirked at him the moment he walked in. "Do you remember?" Jack asked, not with anger, but with stunning clarity. "You said, people like you probably can't afford to test drive cars like these. I'm not here to blame you, but let me ask, what if I really was just a regular customer?" Marcus lowered his head, offering no defense. Jack went on, "And Elena," he turned toward the manager, "I read your file. 12 years of experience. Led your team to top sales 3 quarters in a row. But today, I didn't see a leader. I saw someone so afraid of losing image, she forgot what real value looks like." Elena opened her mouth as if to respond, then closed it again. Her eyes wavered between regret and confusion. Jack sighed. He turned to the rest of the staff, his tone softening, but no less pointed. "You know, I was once denied a car loan just because I didn't look trustworthy. I've never forgotten that feeling. And I promised myself, if one day I had the power to change that experience for someone else, I would." From the reception desk, a young employee named Lena hesitantly raised her hand. Mr. Nicholson? I'm sorry. From the moment you walked in, I felt something wasn't right. But I didn't speak up." Jack looked at her and gave a small, understanding nod. "You weren't wrong to feel something was off, but we only change the world when we choose to act, and that's what I hope to see in every single one of you." Robert, the regional director, finally stepped forward from where he'd been silently standing near the door. "In 10 years, I've never seen an owner walk into one of our showrooms incognito like this. And I have to say, no formal audit has ever taught us more than what we witnessed today." A soft round of applause began from the back of the room. Then it spread, tentative but sincere. Jack raised his hand, signaling them to stop. "Thank you. But I don't need applause. I need change. Starting tomorrow, all staff will attend a mandatory service mindset training, not based on a customer's wallet, but on basic human dignity." He turned to Robert. "I'll personally oversee the first session." Robert nodded firmly. And as for Elena, Jack's gaze returned to her. It wasn't cold, but it offered no leniency either. "I want you to temporarily step down from your managerial role for the next 30 days. Instead, you'll be on the front line, interacting with customers as a new hire." Elena blinked, stunned. But when she met Jack's eyes, she understood this wasn't punishment. It was a chance. "And if you truly change," Jack added softly, "the door will always reopen." The room went completely still. Then, for the first time all day, Elena dropped her posture of pride. "Yes, sir," she said quietly. I'm ready." Jack smiled, just slightly. Not the smile of victory, but of hope. The storm of judgment had passed. But the journey to rebuild the culture at Luxury Motors was only just beginning. While all attention was focused on the tense exchange between Jack and Elena, someone watched quietly from a shadowed corner of the showroom. Lena, the newest member of the team. Barely 2 months in, Lena had never imagined she'd be at the center of any story. At 22, fresh out of business school, this job at the dealership was her first step into the automotive world. Each day, she walked into Luxury Motors determined to learn, to observe, and to push through the skeptical glances, the cold shoulders from veteran staff, and the whispered condescension behind her back. What would a fresh grad know about VIP clients? Smile and nod. That's all she's here for. But Lena didn't let it bother her. She came to understand the business, to earn her place, and to prove herself. Not with words, but with action. Today, though, something told her it was time to speak. As Jack finished announcing Elena's temporary suspension and the room braced for closure, Lena stepped forward. Her voice, soft but clear, rose through the silence. "Excuse me, may I say something?" All heads turned. Elena looked surprised. Robert furrowed his brow. Jack, however, smiled gently. "My name is Lena," she began. "I'm a probationary customer service associate. And today was the first time I saw someone treated the way Mr. Nicholson was, yet remained so calm." She paused, gripping her hands together to steady herself. "But what I really want to say is about the others. The ones who've been treated like him, but weren't celebrities, who had no one to speak for them. And I think they deserve to be acknowledged, too." The room paused. Robert gave a subtle nod, as if reminded of something he hadn't thought of in a long time. Lena continued, her voice gaining confidence. "Last week, a retired school teacher came in. She'd saved for 5 years to buy a used SUV. But a staff member told her she might be better off at another dealership because her budget didn't match our environment." Oh, she looked around, not accusing, but sincere. "I asked if I could assist her. I showed her a vehicle within her range. I walked her through every detail. Today she came back with a friend who might become a buyer, but she refused to speak to anyone except me." Robert stood in silence. Jack raised an eyebrow. He now saw a new link in his quiet investigation. Lena went on. "I'm not sharing this to praise myself. I'm sharing it because if someone as new as I am can see there's a problem with how we define a customer, then clearly something is broken." A sudden round of applause erupted from the back. It was Daniel, a senior sales advisor known for being reserved and rarely speaking up. But today, he stood and clapped earnestly. "She's right," Daniel said, "and I'll admit, I've judged customers myself, all because of what they wore." The mood shifted. It was no longer about fault. It was about awakening. Jack turned to Lena, his eyes full of respect. "Lena, how long have you been here?" "7 weeks, sir," she replied shyly. "And you've changed an entire room by doing something that should have been the simplest thing in the world. Being kind." This time, the applause was louder, genuine, and unrestrained. Jack walked up to her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Would you consider helping us develop the new customer service training program?" Lena's eyes widened. "Me?" Jack smiled. Who better than someone who saw the cracks from inside and chose to fix them with action? Robert nodded in agreement. "I'll provide full support to make it happen." From behind, Elena stepped forward. Her expression had softened. She looked at Lena, no longer with superiority, but with newfound humility. "Thank you," she said. "The way you spoke up today taught me something I should have known all along." Lena, the girl who once seemed invisible, turned out to be the very spark that ignited a new era for Luxury Motors. And Jack Nicholson knew well. Sometimes, The person who can transform an entire company's culture isn't the CEO or the owner. It's the one who dares to say the right thing when everyone else stays silent. Just hours after that pivotal meeting, Luxury Motors was no longer the same. That very afternoon, Jack and Robert sat down to draft a reform plan. Not with buzzwords or lofty ideals, but with concrete, immediate actions. Jack began with a simple declaration. We can't change the whole world, but we can change how we behave within these four walls. The plan had three main pillars. First, a company-wide retraining program focused on unconscious bias, cross-cultural communication, and the core value of respect. And the person chosen to lead the development of this new training? Lena. Robert nodded in full agreement. She didn't just see the problem, she lived in it. That's the kind of leadership we need. Second, every employee would go through a mystery customer experience, putting themselves in the shoes of the very people they once judged. Jack wanted them to feel the difference in how they were treated, so they could reflect and adjust. Third, a signed code of conduct, from the manager to the doorman, not as a public gesture, but as a daily reminder that every customer deserves respect, whether they arrive in a supercar or on a scooter. The next morning, a full team assembly was held. Jack stepped up, dressed just as humbly as he had on that first day, but this time, no one mistook him for anyone but who he was. "I'm not asking you to be perfect," he said. "I'm asking you to be real. Real. With yourselves, with others, and with your craft." The room was silent at first, but like dominoes tipping one after another, hands began to rise. Voices began to speak, honestly, vulnerably. "I used to avoid customers in t-shirts. Figured they couldn't afford much. I once told a woman she should come back with her boyfriend if she really wanted that car. I dismissed an old man asking prices, thinking he was just wasting time." Jack didn't interrupt. He simply nodded, sometimes placing a hand gently on the shoulder of the person speaking, as if to say, "I hear you, and I see your change." Lena, now officially heading the new training program, stepped up to the whiteboard and began writing down real scenarios shared by her co-workers. Each sentence, a confession, but also a commitment to do better. That afternoon, she invited a very special guest back to the showroom, the retired school teacher she once helped. The woman walked in, her hands still slightly trembling, but her eyes lit with joy. This time, the entire team welcomed her. No one said much, but the genuine smiles and firm handshakes said it all. "You didn't just sell me a car," she told Lena. "You made me feel seen." The days that followed saw a showroom transformed. Elena, once suspended, returned, not as a manager, but as an assistant to Lena's training program. She volunteered to lead a session herself, to share her story and own her mistake. "You may look at me," she said, voice filled with emotion, "and remember that I was the one who turned away a customer, who turned out to be our owner. But if I've been given a second chance, I want to use it to make sure no one else makes the same mistake I did." The room applauded, not out of forgiveness, but admiration for her courage. One quiet afternoon, Jack sat at the reception desk observing. He watched Lena guiding a new hire, saw Daniel warmly greeting an elderly couple asking about a coupe, and spotted Elena at the back, silent but determined. Robert walked up beside him and placed a warm coffee on the counter. "Do you think what we did really changed anything?" he asked quietly. Jack smiled. "Don't think, Robert. Just look." Outside, a middle-aged man stepped into the showroom. Faded t-shirt, worn sneakers. Lena approached without hesitation. "Hi there," she smiled. "I'd love to show you some cars that might fit your needs. Shall we start?" Jack nodded, turning to Robert. "See that? That's how you start a conversation. With respect 1 month after the shocking incident at the Luxury Motors showroom, the entire atmosphere had shifted. Gone were the judgmental stares and subtle slights. In their place were warm smiles, genuine laughter from the reception desk to the delivery bay, and most importantly, equal footing between buyer and seller. No one was too underdressed, and no one was dismissed for worn-out shoes. Jack Nicholson, founder and newly minted owner of the Luxury Motors chain, chose to hold a special internal ceremony on the first Monday of the month. There were no cameras, no media, no fanfare. But for his team, it was a day that would redefine the culture of the entire organization. The event took place right in the main showroom. Luxury cars were pushed to the sides, making way for a modest stage. Behind Jack hung a wooden sign carved with the words, "Here, every customer deserves respect, even if they're not wearing a suit." Jack stepped onto the stage, dressed in his usual simple shirt. No microphone, no podium, just him, standing before the people he'd chosen to trust. "I was once judged by my own staff for wearing a hoodie and old shoes," he began, his voice calm but resonant. And that didn't make me angry. It made me sad. The room fell silent. Lena stood toward the back, fingers interlocked. Elena listened quietly from the corner. Robert nodded slowly, as if agreeing with every breath. Jack continued, "Because if someone like me, someone with the power to change the system, can be treated that way, what about everyone else? The workers? The single mothers? Those struggling just to stay afloat?" He paused, scanning the room. "We don't just sell cars. We create experiences, and those experiences must begin with respect." A round of applause erupted, not for a grand speech, but for a simple truth finally being embraced. Jack held up a black folder. "I call this the Kindness Code. It includes 12 commitments, from how we speak to customers to how we treat each other. Every employee, from general managers to interns, will sign it, not for show, but as a pledge." Then he turned to Lena, smiling with unmistakable trust. "And Lena will oversee the cultural integrity of this entire organization." Lena stepped forward and accepted the folder amid thunderous applause. The once shy girl had now become the team's greatest source of inspiration. In her eyes burned a fire, no longer trembling, but fiercely alive. At the end of the ceremony, Jack invited everyone to sign the pledge, etched onto a wooden display that would hang at the showroom entrance. Beneath the signatures, a small inscription read, "You don't have to dress like a millionaire to be treated like a human being." Elena was the last to sign. Her hand trembled slightly. After writing her name, she looked up and said, "I used to think professionalism meant filtering customers at first glance, but now I understand. Real professionalism is the patience to listen and the kindness to never judge." Jack nodded. No more words were needed. The change had already begun. Later that day, on his drive home, Jack stopped at a red light. Next to him was an old hatchback. Inside, a mother and her daughter. The little girl beamed as she stared at Jack's car. Jack rolled down his window, smiled, and said, "Your ride looks awesome, kid." The girl giggled. The mother smiled in gratitude, her eyes glowing with something words couldn't quite capture. And in that moment, Jack realized kindness isn't a philosophy. It's a choice, a habit, a daily commitment. From that day on, Luxury Motors became more than just a luxury dealership. It became the birthplace of a new culture, where every gaze was level, every word carried meaning, and every customer was truly welcome. Have you ever been judged by your appearance? This story isn't just a twist, it's a reminder. Respect never needs a credit check. Like, share, and comment if you believe attitude matters more than appearance. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might just leave you breathless.